Kingdom greetings. This is God's handmaiden Autumn, and I'm coming to you because God gave me a word recently. And the word was, don't miss your window of opportunity. And God gave me a few things that will cause us to miss our window of opportunity. This is a time where God is opening doors and windows and doing things supernaturally to bring his people to their place of destiny. And we don't want different things, whether it's within us or whether it's lacking wisdom, to keep us out of that place that God has called us to. One of the first things that the Lord told me is to not look at a opportunity as being small. Sometimes from a natural perspective, we can look at things and maybe they don't line up or maybe they don't seem as big from a natural eye to get us to the place that God is taking us. But when God gives us instructions, we have to trust the plan of the Lord and trust that God knows best and trust that he's not misleading us, and don't minimize an opportunity. Oftentimes, just to use an example, when we go through a door, there are oftentimes when you go through a door in a house, there are oftentimes there is a screen door before you get to the major door. So to have the right perspective and not see the opportunities that God is opening up as small, or that we can't do a certain thing that God told us to do because it isn't on the magnitude that we feel it should be on. Another thing that God spoke to me is to have maturity. A lot of times when God opens doors, if your maturity level, if your mentality and your perspective is not in the right place, then you can demolish a door that God has opened. And it's not that he did not open it, but we did not have the character to maintain what God has opened. Another thing, just being a woman of God that has grown up within a church, that came to my heart is don't be weird or don't be socially awkward. And I know that may sound a little unusual, but there are some traditions that we have in the church at times, or certain things that we understand, certain lingo that when we utilize it outside um, of the four walls, maybe other people will not understand it. And when you don't keep that perspective in mind, you can ruin, an opportunity that God has opened. Just for example, what does it look like when you're like, if God called you to a boardroom meeting or called you to a very special event with with different types of people, and maybe you go speaking in tongues or saying things like the devil is a liar in those settings, that will make you look weird. So you have to be aware of your circumstances and you have to be aware of your surrounding, and don't close the door that God has opened for you. I can remember years ago, a man of God told me, in a situation, think, then act. And even unto this day, I think that is one of the most wisest pieces of information that someone has given me. Because, in other words, don't let your emotions take you over to the point where you can't think rationally. When you let your emotions take you over to the point where you can't think rationally, that can close doors because again, you're lacking the maturity to be able to fully walk into the door that God has given. Also, the Lord gave me another point. Don't allow fear to minimize the door. Don't allow fear to cause you not to be able to access what God has given you authority to access. There are times where we don't see ourselves in the way that God has said we are, and then that causes fear, and we won't walk through the door. Another thing, and I would say what is the final thing that God has given me, um, in regards to not missing your window of opportunity, and that is to stay the course. There are times where God can tell us to do something, and the enemy, being the enemy, he's going to try to get us off of course. But we cannot allow the enemy to get us off course when we know that God has assigned us to do a thing. There are times when God will shift us from one place to another or one mission to another. And it's one thing if God tells you that whatever you were doing is no longer necessary. But when God gives you an assignment and he has not moved you from that assignment, do not allow yourself to be moved. I can remember several years ago, just to give another example, when God told me to do a certain thing. And this thing was so hard. It was so hard to just finish what God had said to me. There were even times he spoke into my spirit to set my face like a flint. But because, I couldn't see the end result, and at that time I didn't have enough faith to stay the course. I can even remember a woman of God telling me she had a dream about this certain assignment that I was supposed to do. And she said it flipped. And in that season, I moved out of the place that I was supposed to be in. And her dream was true. It flipped, but it flipped without me. So that taught me a lesson. When God is opening up windows for you and opening up doors for you, to stay the course, even though it gets hard, because the scripture says the enemy will come in like a flood, but God has set a standard for us. So in this season, I admonish you as God is moving and he's causing you to get into the place of destiny. Don't miss your window of opportunity.